Oh, beautiful evening here. Super hopeful tonight. Uh, should have a few hours of mostly clear skies. Still going to have a few clouds to dodge, but got to take what you can get. So tonight I'm looking to do a little bit of a 2-for-1, where number one, I'm trying to get out and get that sort of rite of passage sort of shot for landscape astrophotographers around here, which that being the bright canola crop, almost ready to harvest, against the setting Milky Way over there in the west. And that will come down later tonight. The second part of the video, I guess, is how I acquire the signal or the data for that image that I'm going to put together once I get home and get the images on my computer. And that is the Move Shoot Move 2-in-1 rotator. Now, I'm far more of a time-lapser and motion time-lapser. So I actually originally bought this with the main intent of using as a panning head, which it is quite good at, although I think there are probably better units on the market today. So I probably wouldn't buy it strictly for that purpose anymore. So I won't probably go any deeper into that side of it. Apart from that, it can be used for a panning head if that's your thing for time lapse. But the second function it has is it is an equatorial mount Star Tracker, and it is been my go-to mount for the sort of photography I do for probably the last 3 years. I also have the Skywatcher Star Adventurer 2i, and recently got the Ioptron Sky Guider Pro with iPolar, and they have their place, and that's pretty much longer telephoto sort of area with guiding, that kind of stuff. This is my Milky Way tracker, just because I'll usually be heading out and I'll have a bag full of lenses, not sure what I'm going to be doing. I do not want to dedicate a lot of space in my bag for an awkwardly shaped, heavy, cumbersome sort of star tracker. And not that the Skywatcher or Ioptron are that, but by comparison, they are. Yeah, there's just nothing else on the market. It's only half a kilo, and it's going to internal battery, spirit levels built in, and you're not going to get something that I know of, at least, that performs better or suits the purpose of Milky Way tracking than this. Now, if you go online, YouTube, there are all the big dogs have already done their reviews on this. So, your Alan Wallace, Peter Zelinka, even Australia's Astrophoto Bear from Western Australia, he's well and truly done, or they've well and truly done their reviews on this unit. And they were all majority very positive. However, if you look at most of the reviews available online, they are all very Northern Hemisphere biased, I would guess. And that is because the big thing this tracker brought to the market was alignment via laser sight. So by a standard kit, or the standard package will come with a mount off the side that you can clip on, and then inside that you mount a laser pointer. Up in the Northern Hemisphere, you point it to the North Celestial Pole. Right there is Polaris. You just have to point the laser pointer up to that star, and you're good to go. Couldn't be easier. That's like a 10-20 second alignment, and you're going to get 2-3 minute exposures at your wider focal lengths. Not so useful in the Southern Hemisphere. Here in Australia especially, we don't have a strong pole star. We just don't. There's nothing up there for us to visually align to. And secondly, laser pointers, or certainly laser pointers of that strength, are illegal. So we just can't use them here. What we do get the Southern Hemisphere kit, I think it's called, is they will replace the laser pointer with a polar scope. And I'll say straight off the bat that that scope had me put this on the shelf or use it purely as a panning head for quite a while. I just had so much trouble polar aligning using the polar scope that it really put me off trying to even get my foot in the door of using a Star Tracker. I just found it a completely frustrating process. And that was until I started using phone apps, I guess. So sort of looking at the first aspect I would categorize or put value to on a Star Tracker, it is the smallest, most compact, and because it's just a rectangular shape, it is, you chuck it in your bag, you're not going to know it's there. And if your style of photography is, for one, just taking Milky Way shots, not really doing those, anything sort of over, I would say, probably 85 mil with any regularity, then this is a tracker you should be looking at. And I'll typically take off with a bag full of lenses and 3 or 4 cameras. So I don't have a whole lot of room to spare anyway. So I really don't take my Skywatcher or my Ioptron trackers out with me unless I'm doing something specific with them. So in terms of portability, compactness, I think this is a clear winner of the options out there at the moment. It does have a reduced payload. It only has a payload of 3 kilos versus 5 kilos of the bigger units, being the Sky Adventurer and the Sky Guider Pro. However, for the purpose of just using like a mirrorless, even mirrorless full frame camera with made for mirrorless style lenses, like I've got here, the 35mm Samyang Tiny Prime, you're just not going to come near that payload limit anyway. It's never going to be an issue. So the Move Shoot Move wins the portability and compactness aspect of my mini review. That I just don't think the other options for a Milky Way Star Tracker offer what this unit does. So moving on to the next part is, how easy is it to polar align? Now, as I mentioned earlier, I find in the Northern Hemisphere, this is going to be a no-brainer. Like, although I think Move Shoot Move do now offer attachments for your Sky Guider Pro or your Star Adventurer to use the laser pointer, that's still only applicable to the Northern Hemisphere, where you've got that strong Polaris alignment star for the North Celestial Pole. Down here in the South, it doesn't matter what tracker you're using, polar alignment is definitely a consideration, because it is, especially for newcomers, it can be a real barrier, right? So I don't particularly think this is any worse than the other units I've got and have used. However, I found the polar scope completely useless, essentially. I just could not use it. And that's probably on me, but I just found it such a frustrating experience. I put it aside, it's gathering dust. I actually don't even know where it is anymore. And I moved on to using phone apps. Now, I'm not going to go into how to polar align this unit or polar align in general in this video. I'll keep that for a separate video, because I think it's quite a broad, or broad enough topic at least, it deserves its own spot. But what I will say is my alignment got a lot better once I got the phone mount bracket that Move Shoot Move have. And from that, yeah, I could use a number of apps, and even since then I'm using phone completely for polar alignment on this unit, and I can get it very accurate to the point where up to 35 mil I don't think 5-minute exposures with perfectly round stars is quite doable with my full frame camera here. And you'll definitely get, multiple minutes up to 85 mil. But this brings us into probably the third, and I would say final, because I've really got to get in there and get my foreground shots before all the light disappears. And that is tracking accuracy, I would say. Now, this is legitimately the only gripe I have with this unit, and it's not tracking accuracy. I think the tracking accuracy is terrific for what this is. However, and I think John Rudder brought this up in his review of the unit, and I'll try and get some footage here to show you close up. But essentially, the mount on this unit is just a thread, whereas on your Star Adventurer and your Sky Guider, you have a dovetail mount. And when you lock your camera in on those mounts, it is rock solid. And the problem with having a thread-only mount is once you've been tracking through the night, and usually when you're a bit more sleepy, and it's come over to the right side of your tracker. So it's at that stage, it is putting pressure, it's putting torque on the thread to actually undo your ball head or whatever mount you're using to put your camera on. And if your payload up the top is heavy enough, it will actually undo the whole thing and you're going to have a bad time. It has happened to me early on. I damaged one of my first A7Rs. I think it was just like the media card door got smashed down on the tripod or something like that. But no biggie. But it was definitely a learning curve. But I would have hoped that subsequent versions and revisions had some kind of pin locking mechanism or custom mount so that you could actually lock your ball head onto here and be confident that it's not going to destroy your camera gear once the torquing of the payload got to the side where it's trying to undo the mount. So for every problem, right, there's going to be a solution. And I've seen online people who are creating custom mounts with just Arca-Swiss plates and drilling holes through them and into the unit themselves. So definitely not a good idea if your unit's still under warranty. But in that way, they're creating a mount, essentially, that is where the torquing of your payload is not going to undo the thread of the mount itself and potentially damage your gear. What I tend to do, and this is probably my favourite getup, is using Alan Wallace's Z bracket. You can also use his V bracket as well. And what I do is once I've got that done up tight, I'll loosen the rotating nut at the bottom, and I'll put it so that on the side, so that the torque is actually trying to do up the thread, and I will make sure my camera stays to that side through the night. And when it comes down to it, like a lot of the frustration with it, I guess, is you wouldn't get that torque if it was balanced. And for other mounts, the bigger mounts like the Sky Adventurer and Sky Guider Pro, you have counterweights. You don't have that with this, although, and I'll try and show you real quick if I can get this off. So what I'll generally do here is I usually have a bigger Arca-Swiss plate on the bottom here, but for tonight it'll do. What I'll generally do is just mount it up pointing in southerly direction with its axis of rotation pointing towards the celestial pole. And what I've done here is I've put on just a Arca-Swiss panoramic clamp. And what that does is effectively gives your MSM an RA access clutch, which the other mounts in this category have, which is a large advantage for them. It's definitely not as good. It's because it's still got quite a bit of resistance in there, but it does give you then the option to really tighten this down. And I've even used some basic adhesive underneath here, so to really strengthen that bond, as you've got to really lock this down as tight as you can without, breaking the unit. But that also means you can still take it off and not do any sort of permanent alterations to your unit. So what I do then to try and create a balanced payload is I've got this long, I think it's a 300mm Arca Swiss plate, and with just a ball head on one end, which is where I'm going to mount my camera. So I'll just slide it into place, and you sort of want that ball head still roughly, doesn't have to be too accurate, but just roughly over the mount's rotation. You can attach anything you want really, but I've got another ball head handy here. So you can see there that the weight of that ball head is definitely bringing the center of gravity to this end of this long Arca Swiss plate. And keep in mind that these are not heavy components. It's just this fulcrum, this arm, is giving a lot of torque to this end of the payload at the moment. Things change when we put a camera on there though. But what you essentially want to do is just get it to a spot where when you put the arm either out either side, it just sort of stays there. And just because of the resistance in this panoramic plate, I have no doubt that's not perfectly balanced, but what you'll find is that will give the unit enough balance that torquing motion of trying to undo the whole payload as the camera flips over, or the payload flips over, and putting what should have been torque on to undo the mount, it largely goes away. So really the whole purpose of this is for that tracking accuracy. Now looping right back to the start, is that by using this or a similar sort of counterweight system, which is fairly homebrew, as you can see, you're relieving a lot of that stress on the gears. It doesn't matter if it's not perfectly balanced, but if you are getting, half a kilo of stress out of the equation, then you're going to be in a much better position and much less likely for the whole lot to unravel itself. So anyway, I think that about does it. We're pretty close to needing to get my foreground photos done, and I'd say we're probably a half an hour away from complete darkness.